Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, our listeners. We are back.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, everybody's like year end, just like let me go. I don't want to record. I want to go. Chill. Last episode for the year, and then we'll go. And of course, last episode, it has to be ominous, and we want to make sure that we cover the all most important thing, which is the top 10 trends of cybersecurity in 2024. Dun dun dun.
Welcome. You are listening to SecurityLah Podcast, Season 3.
Yeah, and maybe I shouldn't have used that. That's for Halloween and not year
Yeah,
end.
man.
Let me
Yeah.
replace that with some Christmas jingles after
Yeah,
this.
man.
So we'll insert
you.
some Christmas jingle after this message.
Thank you.
Okay,
Cyber bell, cyber all the way.
okay. My mind is going somewhere else, but it's okay. All right. So let's start with SecurityLah's top 10 list. First on the list, compromised credentials.
Happening a lot.
Yeah. And you're seeing the bad guys are no longer trying to create their own credentials. They're just using existing credentials, either getting them from a broker or they're doing password spraying or whatever methods that they use to get existing credentials. And the reason why I see them doing this is to hide their traffic so that, the people would seem that, this is existing staff who's trying to do something. So it's very difficult for you to detect between a legitimate access versus an illegitimate access done by a validated or a verified staff. So we see this in a few breaches recently, and we're going to see this more and more in the coming years. We're seeing that the attackers are actually focusing on existing credentials, and that would help them mask their presence as well as their activities, because nobody actually validates what a valid user does. I mean, like, for example, Sky may be busy doing his sales and marketing report and all that, and in the meantime he tries to do an RDP or a remote session to a backend server. Everybody's gonna say, yeah, Sky is doing his own stuff, right? And nobody's gonna know that Sky is actually being abused by a threat actor to gain access to the backend sites. So yeah, so what do you guys think? Compromise assessment. Sorry. Compromise
Compromised
credentials.
Yeah. I think it's happening a lot of late, and especially towards those what we call easy targets, because
Mhm.
many people doesn't know that there is a way to embed certain script into their web page, especially those that calls for login credentials.
Mhm.
So the recent one I experienced was in one of my customers' web page, where it has been breached since 2021.
Wow,
And
so
yeah,
long.
correct. What they did was they actually embed some level of script into the web page, so much so that it points itself to a certain website, and every time when you recover from backup, the next time you switch on that web page, it goes back to the same thing again. And this actually directs the user to some host files in Brazil, and it belongs to a Portuguese. They use the SSH services.
Innocent question. Wouldn't that be an issue with their backup? Because one of the problems when we get into a compromise is that we don't know how far back the attackers have been lurking in the system. So the challenge has always been that, if the attacker has attacked and when exactly they came in, then you can say that I just restore the backup that was before the attackers coming in. But if you really don't know at what point of time they come in. Now, the challenge is going to be is when do we decide the backup should be restored? Because then the question is that you might end up restoring backup which has the malicious script in it, like what you rightfully described.
Yeah. So what happened was, in this particular case, we found that it was going on too far back, and we even have a long list of users that has already been compromised before. And these are the people. Because of the long list, we actually recommend them to forget about the backup, because there's no point going through, like you said just now, rightfully. We don't know how far back. So we actually took a particular created image, and we recreate the whole website, and we
That would be a better option.
coded, because instead of trying to find, and then once you go back up and you don't know whether the script is still there or not, so we went all the way, and then we just said forget it. After about 2 days, we told the customer, forget it, we are just going to get you to
Rebuild the server.
build the server. That's the word. Yeah. Rebuild the server, and then in fact,
Sorry.
yeah. So in fact, what we did was subsequently, because both the cPanel as well as WordPress were all compromised. And,
okay.
Yeah. So generally, it was everywhere, and there's nothing you can do, because 2 times they did a backup restore from a seemingly clean copy, and then one hour, not even 1 day, 1 hour later it goes back. So it's very bad.
So the other possibility that I could think of is that there is a bot that's actively exploiting. So the other issue that could probably be is that there is a vulnerable component or server or services that is still running in the old backup. Because one of the things you have to remember is that the old backup may have patches that are missing. So they should restore, make sure the patch level is updated, make sure all the software components, everything is updated, then put into production. Because one of the challenges is that they're like, get the service up and running. So they restore the backup, they put it in, bam, they get hit again, and they are vulnerable. So you're right. Unless if they really know where the root cause of the problem is, then the best thing to do is actually rebuild from scratch.
There was also a PHP file that was inside the script.
Is it safe to say that compromised credentials are the start of bad guys entering an environment and moving laterally? So then what's new? I mean, so are they for 2024, are they going to do more of
No, because the targets are you see, the issue is, for example, if I want to hit I don't go and hit bank. I hit someone who is a supplier to and that's trying to get those compromised credentials so that I can actually go in. That is the problem, because the bank is so strong, but it is the third party surrounding the bank that are weak.
I see.
That's a supply chain attack.
Yeah, supply chain. So so what's going to be new for 2024 is like the new ways of compromising credentials, which is supply chain attack. There's going to be more of it. They're going to use more methods. They're going to use more social engineering. There's going to be new types.
I don't think it's going to be. I don't think it's the new type of attacks, but rather I think new targets.
New targets.
You're going to see more of this type of attacks being prevalent because we're seeing the threat actors going after existing accounts. Very easy. You go to a social media like LinkedIn, and you can see threat actors scraping data from LinkedIn to identify what the organization has, who's working in there, what's their role. So whether it can be a phishing attack or even a MFA, multi-factor authentication spam attack, targeting legitimate users so that when they actually get a foothold in the organization, like what you rightfully said, Kat, moving laterally until they get to their target. So as long as I get one valid account, that one valid account is sufficient for me to move around the organization. Okay. The next one, number 2 in our list, is ransomware. Ransomware has been in the list for a very long time. What what's unique this time about ransomware is we are seeing that they're changing their tactics. So ransomware started off as a software that encrypts your hard drive, and it says, okay, so if you're on your file, pay me, blah blah blah, insert your favorite cryptocurrency here to this address, and we'll give you the decryption key. It used to be very simple. Then they said, nah, this is not good enough. So then they started going one level further, and they said, now we're going to really ransom your data. If you don't pay me, I'm going to release your data publicly so that everyone knows that you got hacked. Some organizations have decided and say, nah, it's okay, you can release it, I don't care. So they've gone next step, where one of the recent threat actors, what they did was they filed a complaint with the regulator, in this case SEC, and saying, hey, did you know one of your licensees have been hacked and they have not reported to you within the stipulated timeline? Because
Oh,
you
that's
have
really
a,
pushing it.
Yeah, they did.
so it's like, you are required, as part of SEC in this case, you are required to report within X number of days.
Yeah.
And if they have not, they are literally in violation, and they can get fined and whatever other punitive damages that's required to be paid to the regulator or the government. So
Yeah.
they're changing their tactics, and they're saying that, hey, this is what ransomware is going on. So they're like, it's no longer about getting your data back. It's like, I'm going to get you into a whole load of trouble because I also have your data, and I know who your regulators are. So that's an interesting shift, paradigm shift. And we're going to see more of that happening, especially in countries that have strict regulations for data breach reporting. Now,
So Malaysians are
unfortunately,
safe.
countries like Malaysia does not have that yet.
Won't work here.
Yet. So if you're going to try and say, oh, I'm going to call MCMC or SKMM or PMO's office, they're going to say, yep, go right ahead.
Nombor yang
call
anda
Cybersecurity
dial,
Malaysia.
no,
I said,
no,
yeah,
no,
please
nombor
do.
yang anda dial telah didamatkan.
Perkhidmatan. Yeah.
The other thing I think is going to change will be ransomware as a service.
Oh, yes.
I think this is going to be very, very huge because now you can buy ransomware as a service in the market.
So Sky's non-existent daughter can now be a ransomware operator. It's like, I don't have to build this software.
Correct.
I just rent it from someone and I launch my campaign. I attack a few thousand people. Some people pay me or good money already.
Yeah, because the modus operandi is they put up a platform, and you can go in there and you ask for a service. The developers who develop this ransomware takes a percentage of the payment.
Yep. So it's a win-win situation. Yeah. You launch the campaign, you do the heavy lifting. Whatever profit that comes in, you get a cut.
That's right.
Oh, the other thing that I noticed in a recent forum that I was chairing is that CISOs were specifically now talking about immutable backup.
Yeah, actually it works. I've seen it working. That's one of the things that I see that probably could be a temporary fix for now. Before, of course, these bad guys find a way in.
Mm-hmm.
Because what they do is they lock down any changes to whatever that's being backed up inside. Just like those early days when we do application control blockage, where we say if you have a whole folder of .doc file, then you create an application control where you say only Word.exe can open .doc file, and no other .exe file can. Of course, now they can mimic the Word.exe, so it doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, I've tested one application whitelisting solution. It was so funny. What I did was I renamed cmd.exe into msword.exe. Now, cmd.exe is not supposed to run in that environment. Because I renamed it to msword.exe, lo and behold, it ran.
Yeah.
So the application whitelisting solution, and it's a huge, well-known cybersecurity company that was selling that solution.
It
was
doesn't
only
work.
looking at the file name. So it's like, oh,
Yeah.
this file name, okay, Jalan,
So you see, the thing is, when you say, oh, this one will work today, you can use it, but at the end of the day, you come to a point of time when it won't work anymore.
True. I completely agree with you. Now, next on the list, we are seeing updating on new cybersecurity legislations in the in the US. We are seeing that happening, and also in Asia, for example, in Malaysia, we are seeing a new bill that's touted to be coming out. So, Sky, what do you think about the new bill?
I think it was a very, very big hype at the beginning. People like me and many others who are waiting for some kind of a law enforcement capability to come in and, so to say, save the day. I pretty much was disappointed that it is only addressing the government and the critical national information infrastructure. I thought it would.
Here's a question. You know how in Malaysia PDPA excludes government agencies, right? Are they going to fix that in the new bill?
No.
Ouch.
Yeah.
What about data breach reporting?
Yes, that one will be under I don't think it will be on the cyber bill, but I think it will be on the PDPA 2.0.
Okay.
Yeah, because 2.0 is supposedly scheduled for Q2 release.
Will PDPA 2.0 also still not address governments?
That one we don't really know. You see, when they say, okay, this one somebody asked, and the answer was this. When they say that the cyber security law or bill or PDPA do not apply to government, it actually means that it doesn't apply to government protected data. It doesn't mean that it doesn't apply to government agencies as a holder of the data. That means we are talking about the Internal Securities Act.
Yeah.
So that is part of the reason why, because the government protection of data is under ISA, Official Securities Act, and therefore there is no need for PDPA nor the cyber bill to come in and do another thing again. So that was the answer that was given.
Okay, thanks for clarifying.
Yeah, but I think the PDPA 2.0 will hopefully bring in. In fact, there were rumors that it will mimic quite a lot of the GDPR, if not better.
Okay, look forward to it.
Yeah, let's really hope that they make the changes that they should be making.
Yeah.
Right. Number 4, awareness programs are not something new. They've been there for a long time because there's always this knowledge gap between what's going on outside in the real world versus what people actually know about cyber. So what I'm seeing out in the open is that we're seeing more automated methods of learning. You see, from instead of going for courses, multi-day courses, you see bite-sized knowledge, like, for example, short video or a viral video that goes around in the organization in order for their staffs to be well prepared for cybersecurity. So less of the manual parts, but a lot of platforms that I've seen that comes up, they call it edtech or education technology type of platforms that talks about cybersecurity and what's going on. Because just like how security improves, the bad guys also improve. They also change their tactics. So it's important for your staff, people who are working in the field, to understand what cybersecurity is, what are the latest threats, and how they can protect themselves and the organization in a much better way when it comes to cyber.
When it comes to awareness programs, what do you think about this recent event which I just shared with you guys earlier? So this is an in-person physical event, actually, whereby the Royal Police of Malaysia will be giving a talk about keeping the public safe from scams. So it's called the Scam Free Malaysia Carnival Press Conference, and it's going to be held at the Pavilion Bukit Jalil Exhibition Centre. And just imagine a press conference by by PDRM about scams. So they're actually getting involved quite actively when it comes to scams, and I suppose this is a positive turn.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Their target market is different. So for them, for the general mass public, you can't have online awareness. Most people won't even click the link to go in and sit 15 minutes to look through the videos. So for the mass and for the general public, the best way is to make sure that you have these kind of in area or in place kind of training, so that they can share about what's happening and what's going on, so that people could better protect themselves. Now, scams is a huge issue. We've covered extensively in our previous episodes about Macau scam, for example, on what happened and how people get cheated, right? That's one of the things that we are doing in SecurityLah to get to the average man to say that, while we deliver contents that are more relevant to the corporate environment, we also want to deliver message that's important to the general public as well.
I was at the Securities Commission's conference recently, and I think one of the things that was discussed was the fact that there must be a internal organization awareness mandated to every organization. For example, you have people like Top Glove, who has got, say, 2,000 or 3,000 employees. If every one of these employer actually take the trouble to do a session themselves internally, you would have reached a massive group of people already. So again, it all boils down to the fact that there must be a compliance requirement down from the top to make people do. I have suggested a couple of banks. I said, you guys can do it. It's a joint thing. Engage someone to do awareness training to all your bank account holders. It's within your interest to actually ensure that these guys don't get scammed, because they are holding your bank accounts.
And the way that they angle this, right? This particular event, which is going to be held on 9th of December, this coming Saturday, PDRM fortifies its defense against scams with its strategic partner, Who's Call, powered by GoGoLook, a leading brand in trust tech that enhances global security with anti-fraud technologies and risk management services to create a scam-free Malaysia.
I hate to be a fire splasher, but Who's Call nowadays? I can easily spoof the number without you knowing. Don't talk about spoofing your face. Just your number alone is so easy. We have done this. I'm sure Doc has done this before. We have done spoofing as a POC to customers more than 7 years ago.
I can neither confirm nor deny that statement. Let me put it out officially there, right? When I was in the telco, end of the day, the number that you see is provided for convenience. It is not validated or verified. So whatever you see the number on the screen of your phone, take it with a pinch of salt. You know what? Take it with a bag of salt if you need to. All right. So the next one is artificial intelligence, machine learning, AI, the buzzword of the current, I can't say millennial, but we'll just use millennia for now, right? So we've seen so much of advancements in AI and ML. See, the good thing is the security guys are now tapping into AI to solve the ever long problem of security fatigue. Right? There's so much of data that's coming in that we're ingesting that, it's like very easy for you to miss an event or an alert. And then suddenly management comes down hard on you and say, hey, how can you miss that event? It is in your screen, but reality is that, it's not as easy as that. It's actually a lot of things that's happening that as an SOC analyst, you really have to be seeing a lot of things, right? So AI can help with that volume of data for us to be able to crunch and produce meaningful results. Now,
I I want to add something to that. Having said that, there are customers today that are not used to the capability of AI. For example, when you do a assessment and you go to the customer and say, "Great, we have no findings because the AI has done its job." But then they say, "No, cannot be. My antivirus is showing all these alerts. Why can't you see any one of them?" Because the AI has confirmed that you have patched this and this particular vulnerability doesn't affect your systems at all. So a lot of the customers that I've seen recently, they are complaining that certain AI capable solutions are not able to show them things because they pay for the assessment. They want to see findings. And when there's no finding, they get very jittery and they get someone else to give you the whole list of findings and say that, hey, there's 12 findings here. How come yours do not have any findings? So I think we are still living in a space where we are not used to or rather we don't trust the AI enough. Am I right by saying that?
Yep. I like to point a legacy example. You know how when you buy an NIPS, Network Intrusion Prevention System, it's going to tell you, oh, you got all these attacks coming in. Now, if you configure that device properly, say this is a Windows device, this is a Linux device. So when an attack comes in targeting Linux environment to a Windows server, it's meaningless.
Yeah.
It doesn't affect, unless if it's an attack that, directly affects the platform. Yeah. Understood and granted. Because initially when you plonk in that NIPS, you'll see tons of alerts coming in. It's like, oh, the device is working. Now, after you fine tune it, suddenly you say, hey, how come no device? Hey, the box working or not? You sure or not? Make sure you reboot today. So that's what happens. And that's the issue that we have with technology in general is that, initially it shows you a lot of things. Once you really fine tune it, you can't see it because, well, it's meaningless. It doesn't affect you, right?
So how do we educate people?
Oh, very difficult. This one takes time. Now, while AI and ML and Gen AI does a lot of good stuff for the good guys, guess what? The bad guys are also using it. They're also paying $20 to ChatGPT and say, ChatGPT, please, I'm working as a red team person and I want to create an email targeting my organization. My organization is x.com or whatever. Oops, not X. Say xyz.com. And, can you write me a convincing yet believable email saying that they should click the PDF? And you get the whole thing coming out, right? So while the good guys are using it, the bad guys are also adopting AI, which is going to make detection much more difficult. Now, in the earlier days, or even until today, the bad guys use stuff like Google Translate, which is not really perfect. So spotting a phishing email was rather easy.
Yeah.
You see how the word is, you see how they scope the message. This one phishing lah. No need to think so hard. Cybersecurity professionals, just one look only. Hi, yo, cow team. Right?
I have to change 4 or 5 of my slides in terms of the phishing awareness training now. I cannot tell them to look for grammar error because there's literally no error in the grammar.
Yeah. So now I've seen some of the emails I get. I'm like, wow, this is convincing, So if it's not, because I use a certain brand for my email, they have very good spam filters. So I get them flagged in my spam folder, and every now and then I'll just go to the spam folder to see what's happening. And then I realized, wow, all this is really convincing. If it had not been identified as spam, I may have fallen for it. That's how good the email is. And of course, obviously, if you see the from email and all that kind of stuff, then that kind of tells you, hey, this one a bit dodgy. Don't click on this, right? So the growth of ML is going to help security, but it's also going to cannibalize security. So it's going to be interesting to see in the next year how this is going to play out. Who's going to win? And obviously, when there's a winner, who's going to lose, right? The next one, IoT security, Internet of Things. We are seeing a lot of these tiny little devices creeping into anywhere and everywhere in our organization, as well as even at homes. Your connected fridge, your connected light bulb, your connected anything and everything. So for me to annoy Kat because she has a connected, branded aircon, I can make Kat sleep in very hot room by disabling her aircon. Why? Because the aircon is connected to the internet. So I just go in and say, okay, I'm going to take revenge on Kat for asking too many questions. Nah, press this button and Kat has a hot night.
What a way
Similar
to
to a cat
describe
on
it.
a hot tin roof kind of saying, So
Yeah.
yeah. So, but the good thing is IoT is picking up, and we're seeing a lot of devices that are having more processing power. Now, why is that important? Is because with more processing powers, you could deploy better security controls. So, for example, you can have higher encryption standards instead of low-powered encryption, and all that is going to help you secure your environment, secure updates. You have trusted root and all these kind of technologies that can come in and help your device to stay secure rather than it being an entry into your environment. So we also have another domain on IT, OT, or ICS security, which talks about all this kind of industry control devices where you don't have a full blown PC, but you just have something tiny that just runs the system. And we're seeing a lot of this out anywhere and everywhere. I've seen it running in ships. I've seen it running, traffic light systems. So the kind of stuff you see in the movie Hackers, where you can just turn all your lights green, is now, literally possible as long as you get access into the PLC.
You know what, you guys? Besides just since we're talking about Internet of Things, right? Is processing at the edge. So these devices that you talked about, right? Tiny devices that can be anywhere, that can be processing data and has processing power to do a whole lot of things. Just imagine the body-worn cameras that law enforcement use. And this is something that certain public safety vendors are actually promoting. They have the solutions for it, and it actually provides very huge benefit for let's say police officers who need to see or need to communicate back to a command center about the environment which they're in, and somehow have AI also process the visual, so that the law enforcement officer with the body-worn camera will be able to act more decisively. They're given more insights to know how to act in that particular situation. But I think that also provides, maybe there's also another risk, another surface for attacks. Do you see that? Yeah.
Oh, definitely. If you look at self-driving cars, now there's a number of attacks on self-driving cars where they see something that is not there. Like, for example, there's this famous trick where, self-driving taxis in the US, you put a cone on the dash, car just stops and doesn't move. So it's a simple attack where they caused a massive traffic jam. I can't remember which state it was, where they're just putting cones on top of the self-driving cars and they just come to a grinding halt, and it doesn't move. It's just like lepaking there, if you say it in the Malaysian slang.
Yeah. So a way to hack, but luckily it's actually human beings that will be making the final decision, whereas with the autonomous vehicle, right, it's totally most probably 100% automated and AI is driving it. So but the fact that it's hackable is interesting.
The funny thing I read about autonomous vehicles or self-driving cars is that the police came to check on the car and the car just drove away. So police was quite upset about, hello, you're not supposed to drive away. Hey, you stay. Like manual driver is like, oh, I got warned by police. Okay, I will just sit tight and talk to the saying, sorry, sir, what's the problem right now? Self-driving cars don't do that. They're like, okay, I'm done. I'm just going to move along.
Yeah.
Next one, quantum computing. We've seen this in the past years where it makes a lot of very interesting headways and the capabilities are enormous. So one of the things that I read recently, but I have to put this disclaimer out to say that to me, I cannot validate it because it's incomplete. Okay, so what did I read? A researcher claimed that they were able to crack RSA keys with the size of 2048, which is today a lot of organizations are using it as part of their SSL or TLS keys. Right now, this size today is still considered secure, but with quantum computing, you basically just process much faster and much further. But the reason why I said I can't confirm this was because there's no proof that showed that they were able to recover the private key that was used in the attack. So the paper is out. You can Google for it. There's a number of articles that's been written on that paper, but my only skepticism on that paper is that, until and unless I see an actual attack and I see them recovering the key and I'm seeing them using that key to decrypt whatever traffic or file, well, then I would safely say, yeah, RSA 2048 is unsafe. And my general recommendation to everyone is you should already be moving out of RSA and going into elliptic curve or ECC curve-based cryptography, because RSA and all that. There's another attack on RSA about stealing SSH keys. So now a lot more attacks are coming up, specifically on RSA. So it is good for you to start looking at moving into more secure types of communication. So yeah, quantum computing still continues to intrigue me. It's really not something that a lot of people can get a grasp on. The concept is still, I would say, nuclear physics level kind of technology. But it's really interesting to see how this is going to pan out. We are also now seeing emergence of post-quantum algorithms, algorithms that are supposed to be resilient against quantum computing attacks, which means that the keys are not recoverable using a quantum computer. So it's still something in progress, and I think we are just going to see a lot more traction in this space, just like how AI and ML and Gen AI is actually moving forward and breaking new boundaries. I guess safe to say that we can see quantum computing becoming, the next big thing. What I'm waiting for is someone to actually minimize a quantum computer, say to the size of a Raspberry Pi, making it cheap, making it affordable. Then you will see a true breakthrough in how quantum computers can be used.
It will come. Remember how big our hard disks were last time?
Oh my God, the fridge. Yes, the fridge.
Yeah, I remember I had a computer that has the size of 4 megabyte, and I was so happy.
Dude, I was running with 256K RAM.
Oh my goodness.
The day of DOS, and you have to carry a whole box of diskette to show that you are the geek.
You're working, man. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So
I think
we come from way long back.
The quantum computing will definitely affect one area of technology, which is the HSM, hardware security module, isn't it?
Yes, definitely. and we'll have to see all of these devices, including those tiny dongles like the FIDO2 dongles, supporting post-quantum algorithms or quantum-resistant algorithms, which are now coming out.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see how far ahead it will go.
I remember the time when our central bank was asking everyone to upgrade their 1024 to 2048.
Oh yeah,
that process was wow.
And it's not just as simple as just I just generate new RSA key and putting it in. Suddenly organizations realize, hey, I don't have enough computing power.
Correct.
I cannot support the original number of concurrent connections because I'm taking up more processing power.
Yeah.
But the good thing about elliptic curve is that your key size is much smaller, but your strength is as good, or if not much better than what you get with RSA. So that's a good thing. You don't use so much of processing, yet you get better mileage for what you already have. Okay, next one. We've had some debates on this point, because this is, to me, it's always an interesting point to talk about. Cyber insurance. I'm going to leave it to Sky to start his rant about cyber insurance, and then I'm just going to jump on it.
What's that word again that you guys used just now?
Enjoying the show so far? Subscribe now so that you don't miss out on the latest episode. We are available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many other platforms. Visit podcast.securitylah.asia to get the links to subscribe.
See, I forget.
It's okay. You just start.
Arbitrator.
If the word comes to me, and I'll tell you that.
What was that? Okay, Kat?
Arbitrator.
Yes.
Arbitrator. Yes.
The whole thing about cyber insurance is we lack an arbitrator or an arbitrating company or organization in the country, because there is one point when everybody is arguing about how much is really the value of the data that has been lost or value of the data that's being insured. That's where the arbitrator has to come in. Without that, forget about cyber insurance. Don't even try to go and buy cyber insurance, because chances are, with things that are moving today, chances are you won't get any claim and you're wasting a lot of money buying cyber insurance. There was one particular company who actually came to me and asked me, and I told them it's probably better to use the cyber insurance money that you're paying to buy a set of EDR so that you can protect your data instead of wondering if when are you going to lose the data and you're going to claim insurance for.
Interesting. My only take about cyber insurance is that, I'm reading a lot of news about how insurance vendors or insurance providers, their CEOs are coming out and saying that cyber is no longer insurable. You're seeing a lot of permutations of incidents that are happening, and insurers just don't want to pay. So there's one incident where a famous shipping company had a ransomware attack, and the insurance provider said, no, we're not going to pay. Long story short, the company took them to court. After 3 years, won the case because the judge ruled that it is an incident, it's not an act of war. I think the virus was Stuxnet sorry, not Stuxnet. It was NotPetya that the organization had endured, and the insurers had to pay. So I'm seeing that reluctance of insurance providers, while they see good money in this, because insuring part you get a lot of premiums. The flip side is that whether the insurers are willing to pay when you actually hit damage. And to me, honestly, I don't see that bit. So I don't know. I'm honestly skeptical, because I've actually taken cyber insurance for a very large organization in Asia. So that's where I see a lot of issues with the whole process of cyber insurance. So I don't know, Sky, maybe you might have better luck claiming for cyber insurance.
I haven't seen anyone successfully doing it, that's for sure. I mean, most of the big cases have ended up not having any claim, because the reason is, of course, number one is the arbitrator issue. Number two is because IT is changing so much, and people don't realize that when you buy cyber insurance, you probably they probably will quote you a price for 3 years or 5 years down the road. And the problem is your IT equipment and your IT infrastructure doesn't last 5 years. So any changes in the IT equipment or the infrastructure or the way you even assess your data that is different from what has been declared will actually nullify your insurance policy.
Very true.
So that's one of the issue that people don't realize.
Yeah.
Agreed,
I think it's such a shame. Yeah. So cybersecurity is an area that's practically screaming for insurance, is ripe for insurance, but there's no good way to do it.
See, the issue is not so much of buying the insurance. I think you have providers offering you insurance. The challenge is when you claim.
Yeah.
That's where the issue is. It's not so much about getting the insurance. You can get an insurance. That's the easy part. Someone will come and say, yeah, okay, your organization's not so big. Your risk factor is not so much. Fine, we'll insure you. The challenge comes when you're trying to claim when you have an incident. That's where the issue is.
Because there's nobody can agree on what the real value of the loss can be.
No, and also the area of coverage. For example, you can talk about coverage for data breaches, and the data breach coverage for coverage includes things like how much it affects individuals who are your customers, and the cost that you're paying them back, and then credit monitoring services, and of course other legal expenses. But then there are certain coverage that includes regulatory fines. But if you don't know the fine lines, most of these insurance do not cover regulatory fines.
Okay. So what you're saying, Rodney, actually is, there have been claims that have been successful if.
I haven't heard of any, frankly speaking, but a lot of the cases I have come across. In fact, there was one case where it is the vendor who say, if you use my endpoint protection tool, if you get breached, I'll pay you $1 million US.
Wow.
Yeah, it's in their brochure. But
Hmm.
when the customer actually got breached, they did a check and they say at the point of attack, which is shown in the logs, your system was not installed with my agent yet.
Maybe that's the way to do it, yeah. Instead of an insurance company selling insurance and providing the insurance, it should be the vendors that provide the solutions that should be held accountable.
It won't work because
It won't work.
Yeah. A lot of the cases, it is third party, it is somebody's failure to do so, and etc. etc.
See, the problem is, how can you be accountable for something that you don't have control over?
Yeah.
So as far as the vendor is concerned, I'm selling you a solution. Now, I don't know if you've configured it to my best practice or whatever guide that I've given you, because you're the one who's doing all the configuration. I'm not. So how can I be held accountable if you make a mistake? Because when I go in and audit, then I can say, hey, you didn't do this 5 steps that you're supposed to do when you're deploying these agents.
Yeah. And for them to do so would be like after sales service, which is like a bit too much already.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
It happens in Malaysia. One case where a software developer was breached, and it affected almost 6-7 banks.
Ouch. That's bad.
Yeah, but the problem is when they claim insurance, the vendors say, after we checked, that particular machine, which is the first patient, did not have our agent in there at time of attack. So again, you see, the good thing is all these technology vendors and even people like us who are assessors, we have ways to find out, and 9 out of 10, or I can say 10 out of 10 cases, there will always be something that happened that is outside of the claimable policy scope. Yeah.
Okay, number 9, the CISO's role, Chief Information Security Officer. Now, we've seen, at least in the US, where, for example, the case of SolarWinds, the Chief Information Security Officer is held accountable for whatever he did during the tenure and during the breach that had happened. Now, obviously, if you read that case, it's kind of clear that the CISO did a number of things which he shouldn't be doing. Instead of getting actually legal cover, literally the organization hung him dry. That means made him the scapegoat. And if you notice in that case, interestingly, none of the board of directors were implicated. They all signed a plea deal and they say we are protected, and they made the CISO the fall guy. So that kind of sends a shockwave to the whole industry and the whole world, because now CISOs are like, do I be pro management and make sure my bosses are happy, or do I have to bare my soul to the board and tell them everything that's going on so that I don't get my tooth fired? So I self-censored myself because I realized what I'm going to say. So that's the interesting conundrum, because CISOs are no longer like, oh, I just be business friendly, I can be smooth sailing. And we are seeing organizations, not just organizations, we are seeing governments holding CISOs accountable. So here's the thing. You don't get paid much, because I know in Asia, CISOs don't get paid much. Your responsibility now has become very heavy, because you are the single neck to choke the head on the chopping block, if I've not made myself clear, if anything and everything happens to security, right?
But
Imagine
I think it's
this.
changing, no, bro. I think it's changing, because I'm sorry to cut you off like that, because I actually have seen one particular bank where the CISO was a small little boy sitting at a corner while the big boys were playing on the main table. But he, after the last, I think probably 9 months to a year, with so many attacks registered, all of a sudden they push him up, and this is a very significant bank. They push him up to be part of the board and empowered him with budget and his own team.
No, that's fine. But what I'm saying is that we are seeing, if you really look at the CISO's responsibility, it's not something that, number one, what I'm also seeing in the market is a lot of IT guys are being promoted to be a CISO. You don't see security folks being promoted to CISOs, right? And I'm not talking about small organization. I'm talking about really large, public listed companies. If you really look at the CISO profiles, you'd be surprised that some of them have not done any work as far as security is concerned. They know tech, they know IT, which is one, like for example, in one of the case where the CISO was actually having a degree in music, and everybody went after the organization. So important thing is that, is your CISO really a CISO because the person has done security work? And if so, does the person's experience give the person sufficient leeway to say, yeah, I understand security and I know what needs to be done? Let's not go so far. In some of the industries, they make a certain certification as quote unquote supposedly mandatory requirement. But how many CISOs actually have certifications, cybersecurity certifications, right? Of course, you can always argue and say, yeah, I got relevant experience, I understand security. Then you go back and see how many of you have the relevant education, exposure, and experience. That makes the person as to say that, okay, this person has all these three things that qualifies to be a CISO, right?
In fact, I think if we were to make a comparison or to put the CTO or CIO versus the CISO, I think the CISO's knowledge needs to be even higher, because he needs to know, or he or she needs to, I think I better be relevant. He or she needs to know technology as well as risk.
Yes, definitely. In fact, one of the things I notice is that cybersecurity teams in organizations literally know more about the tech stack. Because why? Every single project goes through them. Whereas if you look at the setup of technology departments or IT departments, they all have their own little niche or domains. So to give an example, the infra team knows infra very well. The network team knows network very well. The app team knows apps very well. Whereas if you look at the security guy, it's like he needs to know network, he needs to know apps, he needs to know tech. Literally everything that's running, he, she, they need to know everything, So that's why one of the things I like about being in security is that you learn everything in the organization. You literally know how the organization works, A to Z. Why? Because every single part of the component is something that you validate before you say, yeah, this can go ahead. I mean, of course, you can always argue and say that, yeah, even security teams have specialization. Yes, but when it comes to actually putting a project out to production, go to market, then you have everyone involved to make sure that every single part of the value chain is actually working.
How often would you say that actually happens in real life? I mean, like, Doc, your experience is like undisputed. Sorry, even Sky, both of you, your experience is undisputed. And you may have had the privilege, the luxury, to have been able to touch all of these areas, network, and all of that. But is it really happening in real life for everybody out, for all the other CISOs out there?
Well, it depends on how the CISO setup is. Like for example, in some of the regulated markets, you are seeing the regulator saying that split the CISO role, right? Which means the CISO is not responsible for the cybersecurity operations team. They are responsible only for risk, governance, and compliance, GRC type of CISOs. Now, if you're looking at a GRC type of CISO, you're not going to see that level of understanding of what the network is. And that's one of the challenge for GRC role. You are the ultimate head of security. You have
Yeah.
no control over the budget that's going to be implemented for security. Why? Because the security operation team, which is usually parked on the technology team, is the one that's controlling what's going to be implemented.
Yeah.
So you
So
have this separation. So as a result, you really don't know what's happening in the ground. You get this nice little dashboard that says, this is what's happening. And you have to make decisions based on that.
So
Right.
it's ideal for them to have hands-on experience. They must have that hands-on experience.
Because otherwise, how would you know the difference between, whether a risk is actually medium, high, or low?
I
Right?
agree.
If you don't have that technical knowledge, how would you be able to appreciate whether a risk is something that you can accept or that risk is something that the organization has to work on? And a lot of times the CISO has to make a business decision, because at the end of the day, you cannot be the guy who's stopping projects from going live. You have to be the guy that finds some sort of magical solution to make sure that this extremely vulnerable project goes live, yet you don't get fired because the system doesn't get hacked. You see the irony in the whole statement?
Yeah. So to me, the CISO need to manage risk. Okay, that's fine, but
Mhm.
risk can come from a failure in a good security architecture.
True.
So
Very
in
true.
other words, if you don't know the security architecture, how are you going to see the risk?
Exactly.
The other thing is, the risk can come from a wrongly deployed technology. So you also must know how to evaluate security technology that enters your organization. So
I like to give one example, Sky. An organization got breached, right? They have all this nice patching policy that says, for high rated vulnerabilities, you got to patch within, say, 6 hours or 8 hours. Of course, I'm just hypothetically saying. Medium risk, say you patch within 7 days. Low risk, 6 months, right? An organization gets hacked. There's this very low vulnerability, which is a privilege escalation, right? Now, unfortunately, the password wasn't configured properly, so attackers get access. They run LPE, local privilege escalation, escalate to admin, and then from there they start attacking other systems, and they get hacked, right? Now, the CISO goes to the board and starts presenting, this is the incident, this is what happened. Then they say, why didn't you patch this thing? For us, based on our matrix, it was low. So that's how they came through. Imagine what's going to happen to that CISO. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Career suicide, harakiri, right? And that's what's happening, because in one of the articles that I read about how a risk-based approach has both the positives and the negatives, it's very easy to say, I did this policy, I follow this policy, that's it. Because the board and the business is demanding more and more. See, for example, let's do a simple comparison between a CTO or a CIO versus a CISO. A CTO and CIO, he basically gets the business forecast and it says, okay, next year we're going to grow by 3x. So I know my system, it needs to grow by 3 times, my storage, my network and everything. Very straightforward, very linear thinking, very predictable. The CISO has to stop an attack which he has no clue about, because it could be a 0 day, and no clue about what kind of 0 days that's going to be published. In fact, if you look at this year's statistics, you can clearly see that the number of 0 days that were used in attacks was phenomenal, right? There's no way a reasonable CISO can say, look, I did my best, but we got hacked. Move it transfer, for example. How many organizations got hit? How many CISOs were let go? And truly, if you ask me, how can you blame the CISO? Because at the end of the day, it was 0 day. The attackers were already attacking and they already got access into all these organizations, already dumped all their data. The vulnerability was found out later part, and then everybody started fixing. The worst thing is the software vendor didn't give the patch immediately and they still had issues. So how do you manage against these kind of issues? I'm really perplexed.
Yeah, you have to grant. In fact, if it was up to me, I would put the entire IT department under the CISO.
Hey, don't be surprised. I have seen organizations do that, because they wanted to prioritize, to make sure that the solution goes out, has priority. Because today what's happening is you will still see CISOs reporting to CIOs or CTOs in some organizations. In some organizations, they're parallel, and in some organizations, they sit in the board, right?
Yeah.
If you see the CISO reporting to the CIO or the CTO, you look at the CIO or the CTO's KPIs, and you're going to see his KPI, or he, she, they KPI is primarily to roll out projects and to make business move. That's their KPI. The CISO's KPI will be like, make sure the business is secure. That's why you have the word security in your title. So imagine that the solution that's trying to go out isn't secure enough, but the business is chasing for target.
Yeah.
Who's going to overrule the CISO? The CTO
So
or the CIO, of course.
in the whole scheme of things, right? I mean, I hear what you're saying about both sides. They had an application or business process or whatever it is has to be secure, but at the same time also there has to be business considerations, like for example customer experience. Who can the CISO work with? Who does the CISO go to I don't know, negotiate or come to an understanding so that there can be balance between security and a good customer experience, so that at least it's frictionless instead of having to go through I don't know how many passwords or how many multi-factor authentications, which will at the end of the day really kill the experience for a user.
This is where if you put all these C-level people on the table, who are the ones that are really trained in risk management? Because you see, risk management goes beyond technology, goes beyond HR, goes beyond business, goes beyond investments, because all this forms risk management. So if there is an issue in terms of spending and all that, just now, Kat, you were asking the question, who? I would say the CISO will have to talk to business and say, hey, this is the issue. This is the way if we're going to do it this way, this is the risk. And therefore, we need to put in technology, and come to a conclusion. But the guy who actually manages all these different people to come up with the final decision, whether this is risky to go ahead or not, is the CISO. Who else is trained in all areas except this poor guy?
Yeah, it sounds ideal. It sounds like a very good response, but I have to say I part-time with an organization, right, whereby if I were to go into a system, there's a multi-factor authentication and the code is actually sent to another person's phone, and then I got to contact that person to get the code. So it's like, there's so much friction for me to be able to do my job. So there's all these little kind of quirks. It's secure, yes, by the end of the day. Seriously,
why do you need to do that?
Sorry?
No, I don't think there's a need to do that, because I am having two-factor authentication with a software called Authenticator, which is actually linked to for example, my Outlook and my Teams. Every time when I need to re-sign in, I just use my own mobile phone and it authenticates me, because my mobile phone is now my identity.
Yeah. So it's not just a technology. It wasn't just technology that was put in place. It was like these controls that were put in place as well. The code has to go to that person's phone, because that person is the authorized individual who had authorization to access that system. But another person may be the one who's actually doing the keying into the system, and they need access to it. So it's all these little things.
That example itself is a security problem.
Yeah.
Now, that means that you're sharing your access. You shouldn't be doing that in the first place. If the person is actually doing the job, he, she, they should actually be the one who's actually getting the code and doing the job. If not, then the issue is your processes correct?
Yeah.
So if you ask me, a lot of times the technology is there to help, not so much to make things worse. I give you an example. All of us have banking accounts, and it's sometimes annoying to get a two-factor authentication or an SMS OTP. Either it gets delayed, or now you have your in-app confirmation and all that, right? But imagine as a customer, when you lose money, what's the first thing that you say? Oh, this bank did not take care of my security, or this organization didn't take care of my security. They should have done a better job to secure my access. Imagine an organization that did have two-factor authentication, multi-factor authentication. I think we've covered this in a few other podcasts where we've reviewed some of the systems and they didn't have these kind of facilities, right? Now, that's the first thing that you're going to think about. It's like, hey, why didn't we do this? Or in some organizations, two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication is optional, not mandatory. So most people would just say, this is mafan. I don't want to do this, troublesome, right? But if you did it, now you're putting an additional layer of protection into your account. So the first thing is the example that you gave, Kat, I find it troublesome because the first thing is you are getting a person who's not authorized because the person didn't have access to access a system. Now that itself for me is alarm bells immediately. I don't see that as a breakage in the process. I see that as, hello, the whole thing is messed up. Nothing to do with the two-factor, whatever, right?
Mm.
That's
They
my
should-
assessment of the situation.
They
So
should have
technology
used-
and process and people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
they should have used the technology calls that talks about privilege access or identity access.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah.
Now, the last one in the list is cloud sovereignty. Now, cloud sovereignty basically means that if you use a cloud infrastructure, that infrastructure comes under the jurisdiction of that particular country. Now, the reason why we have this is because today, if you see, you may be using a cloud service that's hosted in a country that is not your own. Say, for example, I'm in Malaysia and I have my servers, my virtual servers, in a cloud provider in Singapore. So here's the question: under what law does that virtual cloud server comes under? Now, because it's physically located in Singapore, obviously we're going to say, yeah, it comes under Singapore law. Now, that gives me a bit of a problem because, for example, I'm an individual, so heck with it. You know what? You're going to see my data. I don't have anything in there. There's really nothing top secret that you can see besides me hosting some of the stuff that I use for my work. No big deal. I'm okay. But what about government agencies? So, for example, if Malaysian government wants to use cloud, and they're going to say, "Hey, this cloud is now under Singapore jurisdiction." Now, that's going to cause some problem, and that's why you see, for example, Amazon in Europe. What they've done is they've completely isolated the EU nodes. Number one, they make sure that only EU staffs are manning it, and the Amazon European nodes are only for the European Union. I mean, other people can use it, but it is subject to European laws. So while cloud originally says that, oh, we got scale and you can use compute wherever you are, it creates a unique problem now because then you are, as an organization, you're bound by the laws of your own country. So the laws of your own country cannot be enacted upon an infrastructure that is not physically located in your boundary. That's why you have that boundary, physical, geographical boundary that says anything that happens here happens under the law of the land. So we're seeing this kind of very interesting debates. So we are seeing cloud providers now establishing nodes in respective countries. Why? Because, if I want to do business with country X, I must be in country X. If I want to do business in country Y, then I must have a virtual node or whatever in country Y so that I can do business because the laws are getting tighter, especially when there's an incident.
You can't run away. In fact, there were certain contracts that I went through where both party requires both countries to have their country's law being stated in the agreement. So it states that, for example, Malaysia and Singapore, it will say that the Malaysian and Singapore laws will apply in this. Yeah, no
because
choice.
the issue is that when you have servers physically located in a separate jurisdiction, and you're dealing with very sensitive information, there's always this issue that the company, for example, the cloud provider, can be subpoenaed by court or by whatever legal means to reveal that data that's in there. And since you're out of the jurisdiction, you have no clue that's being done, and you don't know that your data is now with someone else. So that's always an issue when it comes to these kind of things. That's why some of the service providers, they literally put a node in that respective country so that they resolve this cloud sovereignty issue. And we're going to see more of this happening because, like we mentioned earlier, new legislations are coming in. The countries are becoming more, I won't say open, but more strict with data and how it moves, where it moves. Why would the data of a certain resident of a certain country go to a different country? Because in cloud infrastructure, you can or you cannot, depending on how you set it up, move data across nodes within that cloud provider. So, for example, if you're in a country where you don't have any diplomatic relationship, you want to make sure that that data doesn't end up with them. So that's one of the interesting things that we have, from a geopolitical sense, and making sure that the data sovereignty remains intact.
Totally
Okay.
agree.
So we've come to the end of the session. Let's do a quick roundup of the top 10 things that we see is going to be dominating the trends in 2024. Number 1, we spoke about compromised credentials. Number 2, we spoke about ransomware. Number 3, we spoke about new laws and legislations that's coming in. Number 4, we spoke about awareness programs moving away from being manual to more system-based and experiential. Number 5, AI and ML affecting both the good guys and the bad guys. Number 6, IoT security being something that's very prevalent now with so many sensors all over the world. Number 7, quantum computing. We talk about how this interesting concept now breaks cryptography. Number 8, cyber insurance. A lot of considerations about whether to buy or not to buy cyber insurance. Number 9, the ever-changing role of the CISO, the Chief Information Security Officer. And last but not least, number 10, cloud sovereignty. So we've wrapped up the top 10 trends of 2024. And with that, we will take a break for the year end and see you next year. Until then,
Yep.
Merry Christmas, Happy
And-
New Year.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Bye.
Bye-bye.